Hello and welcome to another video. I hope you've been keeping well. In today's video, we are going to be exploring what makes a good equality assessment. So I'm just going to be going through, based on my observations, things I've spoken to with partners about, assessments I have seen over the last number of years in different contexts. These are my own personal top 10 ingredients for what makes a good equality assessment. Now, bearing in mind that I don't believe it's going to be useful in this video to specifically look at one type of assessment. There are lots of different types of quality assessment. There are some that look at just at the impact of something that you've done. There are assessments which look at the entire cycle, so they assess what you think might happen if you were to make a change to a service or a policy, and then it helps you track it and then monitor the impact. There are assessments which just do sort of screening exercises for different things against the protected characteristics. They also have different purposes, though what I don't want to do is have a conversation with you about what types of assessment to use. It's very, very subjective, and you will have a particular set of circumstances that you need to fulfill. The only take I want you to get from this video is that whatever type of assessment you want to use, these kind of ingredients might help frame that, or might help develop it, or it might help you think about how much value you're actually getting out of doing those assessments. So this is in no particular order. First up is about an assessment should frame the problem really well. It should make it really, really clear what are the actual inequalities that you are addressing at heart. What are they? Are they a reduction, or are you trying to impact something about how people access a service? Are you are different parts of the population more affected by another? And in what way? For what you are doing, for the change you are making, what is the inequality at the very, very heart you are trying to address, or inequalities if there's more than one? That's the first one. Normally, this should be the first question in the assessment, I'd argue. And normally, if this is answered well and some really good quality time is spent on this first question, then the rest of the assessment should follow through it should be an easier process to do that. And it's more convincing and more compelling as well. The second thing, I think an assessment should not be regarded as a tick box exercise. So in that sense, I don't think it should be done something certainly, or regarded as something which is a tick box exercise. It should be regarded, an equality assessment, as a very useful, meaningful, critical quality improvement tool. We think about it, the way we manage risk has got a certain method and rigor. The way we manage quality has got a certain method and rigor. The way we manage and plan financial sustainability and planning has got a certain method and rigor. Each of these factors, quality, risk, safety, and inequality, or inequalities, or addressing inequalities, they're of equitable value. Not one is more important than the other, and they're all interdependent. So it should be regarded in a quality assessment. It should be regarded as a critical quality improvement tool. That's the second one. The third one, I feel that, again, these are my views, these are my observations based on assessments I've seen. So I'll be saying I feel quite a lot in this video. I feel that a good assessment asks open-ended questions. It does not assume to know the answers, and it seeks involvement from a number of different people. That's incredibly important. A symptom of a poor assessment would be one which has been done in isolation by a single person in a dark room, where they're only really drawn on their own experience, or they're only really drawn on things that have been gleaned and learned from research papers. The risk with doing that sort of assessment without co-producing it is it can be framed around single siloed pieces of information. So yeah, I believe that a good assessment asks good open-ended questions, and it doesn't assume to know the answers. Fourthly, I think a good assessment is part of a routine cycle of business. So it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's why I believe that just looking at impact of addressing inequalities isn't sufficient. I think just doing screening where you look at the process right at the start isn't sufficient. I think the assessment process needs to follow the entire change from beginning to middle to end. And a good assessment fits in nicely and tidily with whatever process you've got around service redesign and service policy. So good assessments are a key part of business case development, for example. They're a key part of planning cycles, be that strategic planning, whatever it is you might be doing. I think a good assessment should be built into that, or baked in, whatever the phrase to use. Another key ingredient, which is slightly related to that, in it being a routine business, is that it is iterative and covers the whole cycle. Iterative meaning you can go back to it. It's never set in stone. It has a clear review cycle depending on what size of scale of change it is. And it's not done once and just left on a shelf to be looked at in a way that, oh, it's great, we should pat ourselves on the back for doing that. It's iterative, so it's a live document. And the reason why it should be iterative is that if you look at the third one about asking open-ended questions and not assuming to know the answers, if the assessment or the first version of the assessment hasn't assumed to know all the answers, there's going to be quite logically things that you're going to have to follow up. So that's why it being iterative is really important. Number 6, I think we're on number 6. It should consider all of the aspects of the relationships between socioeconomic factors, like deprivation as an example, but that's not the only thing. The wider determinants of health and well-being, though things like health and housing, employment, air quality, if it's relevant, and all of the other factors around the wider determinants. Protected characteristics, which are under the Equality Act, and there are 9 of those. If you're not sure what there are, go and have a look on the Equality and Human Rights Commission website. There's the description of each one and the Equality Act. Inclusion and health groups, and the relationship between all of those. Now, this is probably the thing that really does throws myself quite a lot. Exploring the relationship between those things is very, very tricky. And depending on what it is that you are designing, what policy you're developing, or what service you've got in place, certain things won't be as relevant as others. My advice would be on this particular one is make sure you are incredibly familiar with your local joint strategic needs assessments. It speaks to a lot of these things already. It speaks to a lot of themes that you draw on. Make sure that you have really good contacts with your involvement or engagement team, and you can pull out nuggets of information that speak to these things about what people are telling us in respect of these things. So yeah, that's the 6th one. Number 7, the assessment should clearly show what is going to change or be refined in light of knowing what the health inequalities are, or inequalities, whatever they are. Health inequalities doesn't have to be just be health inequalities. But yeah, it shows what's going to be refined to act on the positives and build on those, and just as importantly, to respond to any negative impacts that the change might have in respect of making inequalities worse. A good example of that is if you've got an idea to make something universally available, and you actually know by doing that it's going to create some disadvantage for some groups. So I don't know, let's go an example. You're going to create a digital only solution for a service, and you know from doing a bit of research that could risk marginalising some parts of your communities. They're not making any refinements in that respect. Is going to exacerbate those inequalities that you discovered. So what are you actually going to refine to respond to that? Okay, number 8, it has or informs outcomes and evaluation design. Now, I've spoken to this about colleagues before in the past who work very, very heavily in evaluation and research roles. I'm a firm believer that actually if you do a good equality assessment, it should have a section dedicated to how you're going to evaluate this. So, in other words, what reduction in inequalities do you want to see, and how are you going to measure that? I think that's really, really important. I mean, this is getting to the crux of the matter. If you're going to change something, if you're going to develop a new policy or create a new service, and its mission is to tackle inequalities at its heart, then you're going to want to know if it's actually making a darn difference on all of your efforts. Are they being realised? We're almost there. Number 9, a good equality assessment actually influences a decision that an organisation is making. This one is interesting because, I mean, I don't know what audit's been done nationally around this, but I can guarantee there'll be a lot of difference and variation in terms of the degree to which equality assessments actually influence decisions an organisation's making. It really, really does. But you should bear in mind, organisations, especially ones in public authority, they think about financial matters, quality and safety matters regarding different layers and aspects. And then when it comes to equality, I think it's probably fair to say balance of probability would suggest that matters around equality and distribution don't get considered equitably as the other areas around equality, safety and finance. I think that's a fair assessment. There might be examples of that where that's not true, and I'd love to hear from you if that's not the case, if you look at that. But yeah, I suppose a classic one would be, if you're looking at procurement cycles, a lot of the questions are weighted towards finance and quality and safety. If you're bidding for a service, then and only a small proportion of the questions are associated with addressing inequality. That's a good practical example of that. But yeah, I firmly believe that good decisions are holistic, well-rounded decisions, and they consider all of the little layers and nuances. So yeah, that's my belief. If you believe something differently, I'd love to know how and why you've come to that conclusion. In a healthy way, I'm coming from a good place. And the last one, again, these are in no particular order, is a good equality assessment helps your organisation learn. It helps them learn about themselves, about what value they add, what difference they're making to society. Are they tackling the core problems at heart? Have we actually identified the problems that we're trying to address in a way that improves people's health and well-being, helps them to feel included, and actually gets you to a place where your organisation feels content that it's done all it can to address inequality. It helps it learn about how far it's gone in being really intentional in tackling inequality. So yeah, so there we go. Those are the ingredients I believe will make a good equality assessment. Again, it applies to any assessment. So my challenge to you would be really is have a look at how you go about doing assessments generally. And have a think about to what extent do you think actually fulfills all of these ingredients, or is there anything else that you think is a critical success factor in doing good assessments? In the next video, we are going to be exploring an example of that very, very thing, of assessing in a greater depth how you can go about getting learning from doing equality assessments and how you can gauge how far that's successful, building on today's video about these key ingredients. I hope you found that useful. As usual, if you're interested in digging a bit deeper, I'd love to hear from you about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this video in the chat. But yeah, in the meantime, stay safe, keep well, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.